Productivity. Gladiator.
I'm Brian Nelson Palmer, and on this show, I talk about life balance and personal practical productivity skills. And this episode was so much fun because on this one, I actually did something I haven't done before. It's my first time co-hosting an episode. I ran into Eric Girard. He is the host of Management Development Unlocked, which is a podcast. And his specialty is in the area of helping new managers become good people managers. It's the idea of what got you here won't get you there. And so I've heard about his show and I followed his show recently. And so I wanted to reach out to him and have a combined episode. So in this one, we're going to talk about the 10 time management hacks up and coming managers can use. And this is a lot of fun because for me with Productivity Gladiator, I teach a system on your personal productivity system about life balance and personal practical productivity. So it's an amazing overlap that we have. And I had a great conversation with him. And what was really interesting about this episode for me is that I didn't agree necessarily with some of the recommendations he made in terms of for me. And one of the things that I loved, Eric mentioned it in the interview, and I believe it too, which is everybody's system is going to be a little different. So he had some advice, and you should totally take it if it works for you. If it helps you level up, that's pretty good advice. And what got you here won't get you there. So if there's other advice you hear from other folks and that helps you level up even more, take that stuff too. So one of the interesting things, like for example, one of the interesting things you'll hear him talk about is his approach to putting everything on his calendar. And that's a little different for me because for me, my system that I use and that I teach is that the calendar is where you put places you need to be, either virtually or in person. You need to be in this place. Calendar is for where you need to be. To-do list is for things you need to do. And you should have an external brain kind of place to dump your notes, lists, and checklists is where you put things you need to remember. And so that's my system. And that's different than putting everything on the calendar. But one of the things that I loved is in setting this thing up, Eric's system works really good for him because anytime I was coordinating with him, he got back to me, I got back to him, and it was great working with him to set up this episode. So it just goes to show that your tools and your process, you find something that works for you so you are on top of everything and you can handle it. And that is awesome. So with that, let's jump in. I can't wait to share this one with you. So let's jump in. Here's the session with Eric Girard. Eric, it is such a treat to get to do this with you today, man. I've been so stoked about talking about, we said 10 time management hacks up and coming managers can use.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I've never co-hosted before, so this will be an adventure. And, if you get tired of talking about time management, we can always talk about scuba.
That's right. We just found out Eric is a scuba instructor, and yes. I went through the YMCA dive thing in college and stuff, and diving is fun. So we both found that out, and we both found out that neither one of us have to wear swim caps anymore because we're both already aerodynamic in the water.
That's right. We both have the same barber.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I love it. Man, this is cool. Well, thanks for getting together. And for folks, let's do a quick intro on Eric, just a little bit about your back. We're about to talk about 10 time management hacks for up and coming managers. So what's the perspective that you're coming to this because?
Yeah, so I am super passionate about time management. And I think that came, I'll be real with you for a second. I think that came from being a little ADHD and a little OCD.
Oh, nice.
So,
okay.
I found that I had to be hyper organized in order to get through a day without, just completely blowing off everything. So I have found that keeping myself organized means that everybody around me is happier. I'm happier. And then I've also taught time management as well. And that was like a duck to water where I teach time management, and it's just so easy and so fun. I do things a little differently than most folks, I think. Because I need to be really organized. But I'm happy to share those tips. And, I invite folks to take what works and reject the rest. Just go with what works.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, this is, I did a TEDx talk on the value, reimagining the actual value of your time is the name of the talk. And I was really blessed because it got picked by TED and was out there. I was like put out there and kind of went a little viral. And it was also really cool because I've been teaching this stuff since 2014. I do with Productivity Gladiator. I'm teaching life balance and personal practical productivity skills. And time management is a big piece of that learning. So for me, given these workshops for so many years, I've got so many of these ideas. So when the prospect of like, oh, let's get together with Eric and let's both share some and like go back and forth on this was, oh man, this is so cool. So, and I'm with you. I've never really co-hosted an episode before. So we're trying something new in that like we're both hosts of shows. So let's get together and do a show together. This is fun. So
yeah,
let's jump in.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So what about, well, why don't you kick it off? What's your first one?
Cool.
You said we're going for 10.
Yeah, we're going for 10. Okay. So my focus and my background is on new managers. So specifically helping new managers transform from being high performing individual contributors or employees to being a great people manager. So that's the lens I'm looking through is how do I help the new manager figure it out and stay organized so that they can lead their team as well as possible. So with that kind of scene setting, let's dive in. The first thing I would say is if it's on the calendar, it gets done. So make appointments for everything. I make appointments for tasks. I make appointments for meetings. I use 15-minute blocks for little things. I've gotten really good at estimating how long something will take. And so put it on the calendar. You know, I need to pick up the girls from camp. That's an obvious one. But, you know, hey, I need to write up the show notes from this episode. I'm likely to forget that unless it's on the calendar. And so I'll put that down for 15 or 30 minutes on the calendar. It's blocked off. It gets done. My calendar is my Bible. So that's kind of tip 1 and 2 built in together. Number 3 is the best system is the one that you'll actually use. So I've got my system. It makes some people's eyes cross. So I don't force my system on folks. I say use the best system is the one that you'll use. I meet a lot of people who love pen and paper and have a paper calendar. Fine. You know, I'm not going to ridicule that. I'm not going to say anything bad about it. My system is I use Apple Calendar. I'm a Mac guy, so I use Apple Calendar and I use Apple Mail and I use Apple Notes, and that works for me. I've gotten to the point where, you know, I used to carry around a little notebook with me to meetings all the time, and my handwriting has gotten to the point where I can't read my own handwriting anymore. So I spend a lot of time typing notes up, or when I'm in Zoom meetings, I use fathom.video to record notes and transcribe. So
can I ask you about, I have a couple questions on what you shared on that one, on the Fathom. I've never heard of that one. That's an app on your phone, or is that you take a picture of what you wrote, or how does that one work?
Yeah. So Fathom, there are others like Otter.ai is another one. And there are a bunch of them. These are AI apps that are extensions. In this case, Fathom only works with Zoom, and it joins the meeting like a participant and records the whole thing. It records the video, it records the audio, and then it uses AI to give you a transcription. And so after a meeting, like if I'm in a client meeting or if I'm in a workshop and I really want to make sure I get the key points, all I have to do is the recording is instantaneous. So as soon as the meeting is over, the transcript is ready. And I'll go right to the transcript and scroll through it and go, there's the key point. Boom, done. So rather than listening to a Zoom recording for, you know, and repeating the thing for another hour, in 15 minutes, I've scrolled through and gotten the key points and I'm on my way.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And you were talking, I want to go back. You said you block your time in 15-minute increments. So in my head, does that mean that you have like multiple colors and every 15 minutes of the whole, like, is that just the work day? Is that the entire day? How big, how far does it go?
So for example, if I look at today's calendar, today I've got 3 calendars going. So I've got my work calendar, my Girard Training Solutions calendar. That's blue. And so, you know, like this podcast is in blue for this time period. Then I've got my personal calendar. That's green. And so, for
Okay.
example, meditating is in green, and that's a half hour at 8 o'clock, and then going to take the car in to get serviced and call the scuba dive shop to ask a question. That's in green.
Nice.
Then the family calendar is in red. My wife runs that calendar, and I know that, for
Nice.
example, my
Okay.
twins are volunteering, doing some work over on Bainbridge Island near Seattle. So
Okay.
the nice thing about having these different calendars is if it starts to get overwhelming, if it starts to get too cluttered, I just turn one of the calendars off, and then I can focus.
I see.
So
That
right now
allows you
I've got
to.
the full look at the day or the week or the month, depending. If it's too much, just turn one off, and then I can focus and say, okay, that's what I have to do for work today, and I can focus on that.
I'm glad we're doing this together, because the question I have is I use a similar approach, except for me, the time block, if I have a task that I need to block, the tasks for me live on the to-do list, and the time block is the work time to get tasks done. And so if I have a lot going on, I'll try to block more time for that, but I don't actually put the task on the calendar. For me, it's on a separate sheet, because things are always coming up and changing. So my question for you is, if you plan to get certain things done and all of a sudden something high priority comes up, does that mean, are you changing calendar events, or are you just moving things around, or how does it work for you?
Sure. Yeah, it's totally flexible. You just drag stuff around. So I adapted this from Franklin Covey. So I was trained in time management from Franklin Covey. And a guy named Dave Green was, for a minute, he was like the expert in time management and Outlook. And he had this method called drag drop, turn it into what it is. So in Outlook back in the day, there was the core four. There was mail, calendar, tasks, and notes. Yeah. And so when an email came in, you decided what it was. Was it a task, something you had to do? Was it an appointment? You drag it on the calendar. Was it a contact? You drag it into address book, or was it a note you wanted to hang on to later and you drag it in a note? So you would drag these things around. And I'm just shortcutting that and just saying, you know what? I've got my email inbox. I've got my calendar. I make appointments to get tasks done. So I don't have a task list.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm just shortcutting. I'm just taking a step out of the process.
And I love that we're having this conversation, because it just like you said, everybody has their different approaches, right? So what works for different folks, you find the tools that work for you. And for me, I have the calendar is where I need to be, like places I need to or it's like I need to be somewhere physically or mentally or virtually. I need to be there. So that's the calendar. And then the tasks are somewhere else. And so moving it on, oh man, I like this. I'm going to play with this, putting it on the calendar thing. I'm curious about how that would work.
It helps a lot. I mean, it just helps me focus, because like what I will often do is I will look at the week. So like on a weekend, on a Sunday, I'll look at the week coming or the next couple of weeks coming, and I'll make sure that that stuff that needs to get done is on the calendar. There's a time for it. And I'll build in prep. So for example, I built in a half hour of prep before this podcast.
Right.
Sometimes I don't do that. I'll book the podcast and then realize later, whoops, there's no time to get ready for that. And so I'll make time to get ready for that.
Yeah.
And then if something else comes up, so for example, I've got a note here, a personal note that I need to take care of something with my scuba gear. That's not high priority. And so if something else comes in, I'll just drag that someplace else. It's no big deal.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like short stopping the to-do list. That's fascinating. Mm-hmm. This is cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say I realized I jumped in with questions. I might have some more, but I think you were like, you were on number 3. Yeah. That was where we were talking about Fathom. Go ahead.
Okay. We actually jumped into number 4, which is using multiple calendars. Yeah. Okay. So personal work and so on. I have a client that wants me in their system. So I've got their calendar. I was on a volunteer board and I was in their system. So at one point I was running 5 calendars, and they all told me where I needed to be. And if it started to get too much, it was just easy enough to toggle them on and off. So that's why I advocate using multiple calendars, because you can reduce the overwhelm of, God, that's too much to do today. It's like, well, actually, turn off the family calendar, because you don't need to know that the girls are going on a picnic. That's not information you need right now. So you can shut that off.
Yeah.
And then my last tip, and sorry.
No, it allows you to kind of focus on what's important right now. If you're in the middle of a work day, focus in on what's happening next. I see that. That makes sense.
Yep. And then the last tip, and these are not in order, by the way. These are just, as they came out.
Yeah.
The last tip is do it, delegate it, or delete it. So this is specific to email.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So true story. True story. Right now, I have 20 read emails in my inbox, and that's actually a few too many for me at the moment. I would be much more comfortable if it was down in the teens. I know people who have tens of thousands of unread emails, and they're completely overwhelmed. They're just completely overwhelmed. They're like, why even try? Why even bother?
Right.
So the method I use to handle email, which is a big time suck, I think, for everybody, is do it, delegate it, or delete it. If an email comes in and it'll only take a minute or two to handle, do it right then. Take care of it and then throw it out. Or can you delegate it? Can you have somebody else do it, or can you delegate it to yourself just later in the day or later in the week, and then make an appointment for it? Or if it's garbage, just delete it and get it the heck out of your inbox. Like don't even deal with it. Corollary to that is ruthlessly unsubscribe. You're going to wind up on mailing lists, of course. Down at the bottom of every piece of junk email I've gotten is a little itty bitty tiny in 2-point font unsubscribe button.
It's this big. Yeah.
But it's there. It's there. Yeah. Look for it and unsubscribe. And so I stay on that because I don't want to be on mailing lists I don't want to be on. And keep your inbox tidy so it's not overwhelming, and use a folder system to keep stuff you want to refer back to. So just like where I have multiple calendars, I have multiple email accounts as well. The reason I like Apple Mail is because it's an email aggregator. So I'm not tied into Gmail. Like if you use Gmail's browser app, that's it's really built for Gmail. Apple is platform agnostic. And so I've got my own personal server email in there. I've got Yahoo, I've got Gmail. It sits over all of it and manages all of it. And so each of these email accounts have folders where I keep stuff if I want to refer back to it, but it's not in my inbox.
Right. So you got to move it out of the inbox. For sure.
Because if you're living in your inbox, you're doomed. You'll if you related, a lot of us will start in the morning and start in the inbox and just start clicking through emails. Don't do that. Start in the calendar. Start, planning your day and what are you supposed to be doing. And then, at certain points through the day, go catch up on your email. You got a break, you got, a few minutes between meetings. Maybe you block half an hour to take care of email, but it's an intentional thing rather than getting sucked into it. And then you've lost 3 hours and now you've got to scramble through the rest of your day to catch up with the stuff that you were supposed to be doing.
Eric, do you ever mess with the phrase that I learned is eat the frog first, but it's I can't remember who famous. I think it's Mark Twain. Mark Twain said this, where if you eat a frog in the morning, the rest of your day can't possibly get any worse. It's going to be better. But the way that they use that is instead of opening your email, you do one big task. What's your frog for the day? And do that first before you open your email. And that way, whenever you open email, you get sucked into email, you've already accomplished the big thing for the day. And so I've been doing that for years, but it's eat the frog first is the phrase.
Oh, that's a good one. Now I can't eat frog's legs anymore.
You're switching to escargot. That's right.
Oh my goodness. That's funny. It's been a while since I've had a good truffle. Perhaps I'll switch to truffles.
Oh, put your pinky out. Stop. There we go. Do we, and you brought up the 3 Ds. What's interesting is that for me, it's the 4 Ds. Mm-hmm. It's deal with it, delegate it, defer it, or delete it. And so it sounds like you said delegate and defer are one and the same when you delegate it to yourself later or something, but it sounds like we're using very similar approaches, which is, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I love this. All right. 5 things. That was 5. Let me try 5. I've got one. My first one, and this up and coming managers, stop running errands. This is one that so many things can be delivered these days and people get stuck in going to run the errands. And so one of the things, I talk about it in the TED Talk. I actually have on my website, if you haven't, or if you want to, go to productivitygladiator.com, and there is a calculator that allows you to calculate what your time is worth. And it'll give you a guesstimate for your personal and your work. And so that is my metric for whether it's worth my time to run that errand. So for example, if you're getting donuts and coffee for the team And you could stop at Dunkin' Donuts and get it. Or if you're going to get lunch for the team or something, you could stop and do that. Or if that's going to take you half an hour and delivery is available for $10, then maybe get it delivered. And that way you don't have to take that on or that extra errand on. So look for that, or time for your family at home. It works the same way. You can get your groceries delivered. A lot of the things you need for the house, you can get delivered. And so if it's worth it, you can, now that you know if you go to the calculator and you know what your time is worth, it's easy to an easy way to look at it on, okay, maybe this is or isn't worth it for me to go and do. So stop running errands that you don't have to if you can. That's number one.
Yeah. So my background is Silicon Valley. I spent 20 years in Silicon Valley. And at first I was floored because they had cafeterias on site, like really good food on site. They had laundry delivery service. They had a gym on site. They had all these things.
Yeah.
And, it was a little bit like golden handcuffs. It was like, let's make it pleasant for you to be here so that you can focus on work. But I really came to rely on that, especially the laundry service. When I moved to Seattle and moved out of Silicon Valley, I didn't have purple tie anymore to take care of my laundry. So I was running errands, going to get the laundry. And just on a fluke, I asked my dry cleaner, do you do delivery? And they're like, oh yeah, it's $6 round trip. I'm like, that is a no-brainer. That is a no-brainer. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love that you mentioned laundry in DC, and wherever you're listening from, there is likely a service similar to this, or your local laundromat might do it. But you might judge me for this. People sometimes laugh at me for this, but I have not done my own laundry in 7 years because I found a service that will do it, and it's $1 per pound. And so it ends up being like, if you've got two, overflowing hampers, ends up being about $35 or something like that. But to have that 3 hours of time spent laundry back, for me, is so worth that expense. And for the same reason you just said about, like, this is why they do it in Silicon Valley, and to free up your time so you can work more, or in this case, sometimes you can life more instead of work more. So,
well, I mean, that kind of goes to my point about the best system is the one you'll use. If you think it's worth $35 to have somebody else wash, dry, fold your laundry, and bring it back to you, then okay. I'm positive I could never convince my wife to go for that. She'd be like, take an hour on Sunday and go fold your laundry. Go.
Right. Yep. And circumstances very much so, it depends. And so each decision is different for each person. Totally. So now, so number 2, I'm going to stop running errands again, but this time I want you to level it up with subscribe and save, or subscriptions. And the examples I have for this are like, we have a cat. All of the stuff for the cat arrives at regular intervals. So not only do you not run errands for it, but you also don't have to remember to order it. You don't have to, like, the kitty litter shows up every 2 weeks so that it can be changed. The food shows up, you know how much they're going to use in a 2-month period. So set up that subscription. And so if it's possible to do subscriptions, it's a huge help mentally and for your time, right? The other 2 examples for humans, I just shared cat examples. I share some human ones too, like toothbrush heads. If you need a new toothbrush, you're not going to remember when the last time was that you needed a new toothbrush or when you started it. But if it's a subscription and it shows up at a regular interval, then you know that you're changing every 3 months. When it shows up, you change it. Or same thing, smoke detector batteries is like a big win, because you never remember when the last time was that you changed them, and you're supposed to do it every year or so. So these are just examples of things you can subscribe for. And the other piece is, look for Amazon or for Chewy or for some of these websites that allow you to do this. They often offer a 5 to 15% discount if you subscribe for the item. So pay attention to those. This works for work stuff too. You can subscribe to paper and things you need at work, so that not only do you not have to run the errand, but you also don't have to remember to do it either. It just shows up.
Yeah, nice. I found, like, we were doing subscriptions for stuff, and I found out we wound up with too much stuff for some reason. And so, especially like with spa chemicals, I'm like, you know what, I'd rather not have a year's supply of, shock around. Like I just need it a bottle at a time.
Right.
So yeah, but I see your point there. And going to my first point, if it's on the calendar, it gets done. Guess how often I change smoke detector batteries?
Once a year,
Exactly
6
once a
months
year on the same day every year.
at the same time too, right? 9
No, that's
a.m. When is it?
it's an all day event. It's just
All day, all day event. Yep.
change the smoke detector batteries sometime today.
That is awesome. When you said all day event for a second, I was like, did he take a sick day just for smoke detector batteries?
No,
No. Okay.
no. It's just like it's like get it done today sometime when you have a minute.
Yep.
Like
Absolutely.
it's time. It's been a year, sort of a thing.
Yep. Totally. Oh, that's awesome.
All right, keep going.
All right. Number 3, use AI when you can.
Mm-hmm.
There are Chat GPT. I've been doing a lot with this recently. I've got a YouTube video that just came out on 11 ways you can use it to be more productive at work. It also works at home. There's another podcast episode I just did on AI that was about with someone who, it was Christopher Lind, who was a big AI personality, industry leader. And we were talking about this topic. And one of the things we shared is like, it frees up your time at work. It frees up time to spend more time on your people. Like Eric, you were talking about, you teach lessons. You got to be a better people leader. Just because you're good at the work doesn't make you a good manager. What got you here won't get you there. And the same thing, if you can use AI. So for example, here's an example. You go to one of these Zoom meetings and you have an hour-long transcript. Copy and paste that transcript into AI. Ask for have it tell you what are the action items, give me a summary, and generate a slides to go over this. So if you're a project manager, you could do that with your weekly update. And then the slides could go to your supervisors or your managers. You could have it do the slides and that kind of stuff. But by having that extra time that you would have spent 2 hours creating all of this, and now it only takes you maybe half an hour, that'll give you a little more time. Make sure that you use that time with your people. And so use AI to free up time to be a better people leader that's such a huge one, I think. So get that time savings.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, one of the things I realized, I went to the Association for Talent Development's international conference in San Diego a month or two ago. And I went to every session on AI that I could. And the thing I walked away from those sessions was, first off, I was a little unnerved. There's that. It's like, this is pretty scary. But but also, machines cannot outhuman a human. And so if you can use AI to be more relational, more empathetic, a better human being to your people, and let AI take care of the back office stuff, then I think that's going to result in a better workplace.
Totally. I mean, Eric, I'm sure it comes up in what you teach and stuff, but when you go to all the employee viewpoint surveys and the employee feedback and that kind of stuff, the top managers are the ones that engage with their people every single time. So make sure, if you can use AI or apps or subscriptions, like we're talking about, ways to free up your time so that you can spend that time with your people, it will pay you dividends in your career forever and ever. So man, do it. Take advantage of that time savings.
Totally agree.
All right. Number 4. And I love that you brought up email stuff, because my number 4 is stop emailing back and forth to schedule meetings. I can't. Just yesterday, I had somebody reach out to me inside my company. I also have a day job, and inside the company, the people sent me an email and they asked, "Hey, could we meet? When would be a good time to meet?" And in my head,
inside your company,
went off. It's like inside the organization. If you have Outlook, it's called Scheduling Assistant, or Google has, you can see them, or there's apps like Calendly that
I love Calendly. Calendly is my killer app. Yes.
It's amazing. Yes. And they can see when you're available. So no, I am not going to reply back and give you all of these options. And then you're going to reply back and say, well, I can't do those. What about those? And then I'm going to reply back. And sometimes it turns into 5, 6, 7, 10 emails trying to get this thing set up. No, man, just go look at the calendar, see when it's available. So for you as an up and coming manager, please do not get in the habit of emailing to set up meetings. Make sure for yourself, if you're in an organization and you can set it up, you can hook up your calendar to a Calendly thing, and you can use it for free. It's a freemium service, so you can even start for free and just have a 30-minute meeting that's available. But that will at least let you send a link to tell people when you're available. And it even works. Oh my gosh, you could even use it in certain circumstances in your personal life too. That's, Eric, there's a question for you there though, because I feel like in my personal life, if somebody wants to get together for happy hour or they want to hang out and it's a friend or something, and I send them a Calendly link, there's a level of like, that's not a good vibe.
No.
It's only a work thing.
No. Most of what I'm talking about is work related.
Yeah.
Making sure that things are on the calendar, that's universal. But Calendly is a work thing. Like I would never send a friend a Calendly link to get together for fun.
Right.
Like I think that would be offensive.
Yeah. And at the same time, Eric, I wish I could. With my really good friends that know me, I do it anyway. Because they know me and they know that I love them and I will absolutely cherish them and I do great things. I feel like I show up as a good friend in that relationship. But if we're in a text message back and forth, they know I do this productivity gladiator thing. And so if we text a couple times and we can't find a time, here's the Calendly link. Look at it and tell me when it works. We've gone back and forth twice now. This isn't going anywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's fun. So I did, and I'll include a link. I did do a blog post on how to stop the back and forth Calendly and this kind of stuff. So if you're not familiar with what Eric and I are talking about with Calendly and this other stuff, that stuff is available, talking about scheduling assistant and that kind of stuff. So if you're an up and coming manager and you don't already know about this stuff, please do check it out.
You know what? In my previous roles, I was a vendor manager. Among other things, I also spent a lot of time talking with vendors about training products.
Yeah.
And Calendly was not really a thing when I was inside. Calendly really blew up during the pandemic for me, where it's just like it became like the killer app. But if I wind up inside again, I'm finding a way to use Calendly or something like it to schedule meetings with people outside the company because it's just invaluable. Holy cow.
Absolutely. And if you're an Office person and you don't know, it's called Bookings is the Office app. And so if you Google it, if you're not already familiar, but if you've got SharePoint or if you've got Office 365 through your organization, it's called Bookings. Or if you have Gmail, you can use Calendly. That is a third-party provider. But there's different solutions. So for your organization, it might be different. But yeah, look for it and find it and find a way to be able to send someone a link so that they can book that meeting. So that's a good one. And then, my last one, my fifth one is dictating is 3 times faster than typing. So start talking. And this is it's a blog post that I did and I can share the link, but there is a statistic that typing speed on average, people speak 3 times faster than typing. And so what's amazing though, is that with AI and with all of the technology that they've gotten, the dictation ability is significantly better than it ever was before. So like the one that'll blow your mind, if you haven't done this, try it right now. You can pause this show and go on and hit the microphone button and tell your at your phone or your computer, how much wood can a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And I guarantee you it gets it right every time. All of it knows how to separate them up. You can insert commas. You might have to dictate the commas, but it'll do it. And so the reason I share this is for me personally, there is a dictate button in Outlook that you use. You can hit dictate and then you can talk to your computer, or in Gmail or on a Mac. Every system has a shortcut to access a microphone so that you can talk and learn how to start talking to the computer. And my little rule for myself now is if I'm going to type more than 2 sentences, speak it first. And then you can go back and just read it and make sure that it came out the way that you would. Because my process to send an email used to be to write it down, type it all, and then go back and reread it. And now I dictate it and then go back and read it. And it's at least a 50% uptick in how long it takes me to compose emails, especially at work, longer ones. That's just something for me.
Huh. When you said dictate, I thought you were going to go into a management technique. Which worried me for a second.
Dictate, short for dictatorship. Yes, we have a good time in this company. Absolutely. Yes.
Do it my way now.
Right.
So I'm glad we didn't go that way. But that's actually really interesting. I use dictation right now. I use it with Siri when I'm driving. So so I have Apple CarPlay in my car, and when I get texts from people while I'm driving, I'll respond via text. And that's handy because you can keep the conversation going without getting on the phone, because, the telephone is so passé these days. And so, just being able to dictate a quick response to a text is handy. So yeah, I will play with that.
Absolutely. If you haven't, every single one of them, I just found it took me forever to figure it out. But in Mac, I use Windows professionally and I use Mac personally. And for personal, you hit the command button twice on your keyboard and it immediately activates the dictation feature so you can speak to text. And so it's a great thing. So, Eric, before we said 10 things, that's 10 things. And I wanted to ask before we adjourn, do you have any personal stories? We're talking about 10 time hacks for up and coming managers. Are there any personal stories that you have overall on this topic that, like somehow this is a personal thing for you, or clearly it's a passion of yours because you talk about this? Where does that come from?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of keeping myself organized and then wanting to share that with other people and help other people be organized as well. So my whole focus is on wanting to help, and I've chosen as my niche is I want to help new managers hit the ground running. And so that's where all of this comes from. And the story I've got about this goes to the point I made about the best system is the one you'll use. This is actually a story about a manager of mine named Jeff. And Outlook was fairly new to us in this organization, and I had figured it out. I'm kind of a tech head, and so I'd figured out Outlook and the core 4 and the drag drop, turn it into what it is. And so I'm making Outlook sing and dance, and people around the office knew that, and so they would come to me and ask for tips. One day, my manager Jeff came to me and said, "Eric, I'm having trouble with Outlook. Can you help me?" Sure. Sat down with him, started going through it, and my perception was that he needed to do a specific series of things to get Outlook to do what he wanted it to do. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, it was a list of 10 things. And so I'm like, okay, first go here, click here, do this, change that value, da-da. And his eyes started to gloss over, and he looks at me and he says, "You know what? Outlook is not the boss of me. Outlook is not the boss of me." And I've never forgotten that, because it's not. Your system should not boss you around. You are in charge of your system. The best system is the one that you'll use. And so to the extent that you're able, because I realize that some companies say, all right, we're an Outlook shop, or a Microsoft shop, or we're a Gmail shop. But to the extent that you're able, modify and adapt the system to suit your style of working. That's what I would say for this is, if you're not technically oriented, or, you hate Outlook, find an alternative. I think that there in companies, there is a certain expectation that you need to be able to handle the technology that's offered to you. And I think that you have a responsibility to do that. And at the same time, I don't think you should accept it on its face. It's like, you know what, there's got to be an easier way. So let's find the easier way. So there you go. Outlook is not the boss of me.
Outlook is not the boss of me. I like that a lot. I think that there's a lot of people that will relate to that in technology in general. There are some people that they sign off at the end of the day and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I will not go back on my computer again until I have to for work tomorrow." And so the only way you can get through to them after hours is via phone, because they don't look at their computer unless they absolutely have to. And so technology and Outlook is not the boss of me. I like that. For me, it's actually, Eric, I'm appreciating that you and I are almost like a great 1-2 punch, because your target or your niche is up and coming managers. And, what got you here won't get you there. Being a good manager is different than being a good employee. And for me, Productivity Gladiator is about helping overworked project managers to level up their life balance and their personal practical productivity skills. And so it's really about starting out in the workplace as an employee. And they don't often teach you some of these skills about life balance and how to have a good life balance and how to handle all of this stuff like Outlook and all these tools. And so the interesting personal story for me is I worked in the government for many years, and there I worked with a lot of contractors for the government and also employees in the government who were not necessarily good. You had to chase them. These people, you probably can relate to this. There's these people that you have to chase them down because you ask them for something and then you don't hear back. And now the onus is on you to ask them again. And then you have to ask them again. And like, my gosh, wouldn't it be great if everybody had this system for being able to get back to you or be able to handle the overwhelm. If they've got too many emails, the people with 10,000 emails, how do you fix that? How do you handle that? And so it's a personal thing for me was one of my good buddies was talking to me about this years ago and said, Brian, you have a system, so share your system. It doesn't have to be the perfect system. It's not the only system. And I love that having this conversation with you, like Eric, you and I have different approaches to some of these things, but we both have a system. And so if you need to work with somebody, working with Brian or working with Eric is going to be a good teammate to have because we have a system. So teach that system. And I love that so much. And so sharing these tools and these tricks and these tactics and the stuff that we're doing right now is, my God, I could spend hours doing this, and we're not going to, because we don't want to be in your ears for this long. As far as talking, and podcast episodes aren't meant to be that long. So I think we've gone on and droned on about, we've done our 10 hacks. Anything else that you got today before we just kind of adjourn this one or conclude it?
No, this was a lot of fun. You really kind of reawakened a passion in me. And if folks want to get a hold of me, you can always reach out to girardtrainingsolutions.com and take a look at what we offer. Time management and prioritization is one of our classes.
Nice. And for me, I'm Brian Nelson Palmer. I'm founder of Productivity Gladiator, and we're teaching life balance and personal practical productivity skills to overworked early and mid-career project managers. So along the same lines, time management, prioritization, those kinds of things as well. But I love this. It's through the lens of, as a manager in training and coming up through it and starting off in the beginning. So I certainly would love to keep in touch as well.
Yeah, so absolutely.
All right, that's a wrap.
Productivity. Gladiator.